What's up, YouTube? Zazubaar here. You know, there's kicking a dead horse, like making fun of Michael Jackson being a suspected pedophile. And then there's what I like to call taking a sledgehammer to a dead horse, like me saying that Sony's 1998 Godzilla remake is one of the worst pieces of fiction ever created. And it really is true. I hate the 1998 Godzilla film for many reasons that I won't get into right now. So you'd think that I hate anything associated with it or involving Zilla, or the movie. GMK and Final Wars are both awesome, don't worry. But no, there's one other thing that's connected to Roland Emmerich's disaster piece, the animated series that spun off from the movie. Just called Godzilla the Series, the show picked up right where the film left off, and had several characters from the film as regulars on the show. I kinda grew up on Godzilla the Series since it was on when I had just begun every young Godzilla fan's quest of finding VHS tapes of all the classic Godzilla films. So it did pique my interest a lot when I first saw it on Fox one Saturday morning. For me, it came on an opportune time when I was still learning all there is to know about Godzilla and achieving the now accomplished and what some of my friends call sick feat of seeing every movie several times over. So I still loved the 98 film at this point and dug the series for the 2 seasons it was on. Godzilla the Series was a treat for any young fan of monster movies to watch. Every episode featured some new mutation, as they were called, for the offspring of Zilla from the movie to fight, which of course made it fun to see every episode, so you could see a new monster every time. Also, it tapped into a lot of kids' desire to have a monster like Zilla as a pet, with Nick Tatopoulos from the movie finding the last egg of Zilla and being the only person around when it hatched. So of course, the new Zilla Jr., as we'll call him, imprinted on Nick and became his surrogate son, so to speak, and unrelenting protector. So as Nick is part of a team that studies mutations like Zilla Jr., there's lots to be protected from. If you're a Godzilla fan already and have an undying complaint that the 98 movie Zilla didn't have an atomic blast, the animated series makes up for it with Zilla Jr. being able to expel atomic radiation like the real Godzilla. Zilla Jr. is also much stronger than his movie parent. He can take a little more punishment from bombs and missiles, as well as other monsters. Sure, he still bleeds, but it takes a little more to cause him to do that. The improvements to Zilla aren't the only good things about the series, though, since its human cast is actually pretty likable and fun to watch. Of course, we have Nick Tatopoulos leading the cast, which is a research team called HEAT. Don't ask me what it stands for, because I don't even think they say it in the show. We also have Elsie Chapman from the movie, who's the team's paleontologist and basically medic. Then we have Mendel Craven from the movie, who's the team's technobabble dude and all-around clumsy nerd, one part of a comic relief duo with the hip computer hacker Randy Hernandez, who's always making wisecracks about Craven, and is actually my favorite human character because he's the only one who sees the ridiculousness of their jobs. Then we have Monique, who's a French secret agent sent by Philippe from the movie to keep an eye on Zilla Jr. and Nick. She's also the team's weapon expert. And finally, we have Nigel, a decoy robot who acts as kind of a substitute for a smart dog like Scooby-Doo. Nigel has a running gag that Zilla Jr. is always stepping on him or tail whipping him or, hell, even blasting him to the point where Craven has to keep rebuilding him. Nigel is probably the show's best original creation, since a lot of its elements are borrowed from the old but not forgotten Hanna-Barbera Godzilla cartoon from the late 70s. They borrowed things like the research boat, the team of scientists, in a way a young Godzilla, since Godzuki and Zilla Jr. are probably around the same age, just with different growth rates, I suppose. And having an entirely original monster cast aside from Godzilla. Yup, neither show had reimaginings of Toho monsters, except for some being based on Toho monsters like Robo Yeti from the episode Competition, who's very similar to Mechanicong from King Kong Escapes. Also, the giant turtle from the episode End of the Line, which is kind of based on Gamera. Here, Zilla Jr. also fell in love with a mutated Komodo dragon. Don't ask. While Godzilla the Series was a very entertaining show to watch as a kid, it did have its problems and didn't really age well. One issue I have is that a lot of the dialogue is mediocre at best, like Nick being so no-nonsense and always stating the obvious. Like at one point Nick actually needs to tell us that the Komodo dragon I mentioned earlier breathes fire when we just saw it do it. Sure, it may just be for dramatic effect, but come on! That's something I'd expect from Adam West Batman. Speaking of our dear Dark Knight, Nick is kind of like Batman, but less cool, in that he's always serious and focused on work, but only on rare occasion does something badass, like in a fight between Zilla Jr. and a group of robots called Lizard Slayers. He actually breaks into one of the Slayers' cockpits and starts fighting the pilot, but of course still needs to be saved by Zilla Jr. in the end of the fight. Another problem I have is just kind of a matter of strict opinion. I think Zilla Jr. is in the background way too often, and very few episodes really focus on him as a character, and not just as basically a big gun that is the end-all solution to every episode. In fact, the show over time. There's an episode called Leviathan, where he isn't even in it at all. I swear he does everything on their own, and Zilla Jr. makes no appearance except in the intro, obviously. I'm sorry, but that pisses me off. I mean, it's not like the human characters are so boring that Zilla Jr. is the only thing that's good about the series, but come on, the show is called Godzilla the Series, not Heat the Series featuring Zilla Jr., although that is more accurate in most cases. There's very little character development in the show, which is okay since it's a very formulaic kids cartoon. But some development is needed to keep your characters interesting. Even the monster fanatic kids hopped up on sugary cereals on Saturday mornings. Oh, memories. Anyway, the little development that's here is unfortunately reset at the end of every episode for some reason. Like the near marriage between Nick and girlfriend from the movie Audrey, which keeps getting forgotten and never mentioned at some points when they develop their relationship through the show. Also, Randy at some points grows into less of a wisecracking teenager and into more of a man, which is also a good message to kids, but after the episodes this happens and ends, it's forgotten completely. That's something that's going to piss both the kids and adults in your audience off, because no matter what any other reviewer will tell you, kids do care about character development, because it shows them change and the consistency of that change, and shows them that life isn't an infinite formulaic adventure. Good thing we had our dear Dark Knight to show that to us. You know, I really should do a Batman video at some point. Anyway, so despite coming from crappy source material and having a very in-the-background main character, which to keep on comparing this to Batman is why I don't like Tim Burton's movie, Godzilla the Series is still a very well-done kid show. It's got plenty of entertaining stories, characters, creative monsters, and action to keep kids interested and adults awake. Although I think if you are someone who's about my age and don't have any nostalgia for the show, it's not going to hold up very well, especially if you're a Godzilla fan and didn't see this on Saturday mornings as a kid. It is relevant to Godzilla's history, since I'm sure that there are a lot of people who may be a little younger than I am who saw this show and became interested in Godzilla because of it. So I guess some of you owe it for that. Since my first exposure to Godzilla was seeing King Kong vs. Godzilla on an old VHS tape. Although this did satisfy me as a fan and was just cool to see as a young monster movie fan. Although this isn't a ZMMR episode, I'll rate Godzilla the Series on the same scale and give it a 3 out of 5. I recommend seeing it again to people who grew up with it, since every episode is available on YouTube. Not sure about DVDs though. I do have a Godzilla the Series DVD called Monster Wars, which is a 3-part story from the series, which also was part of the inspiration for Final Wars, by the way. So it also plays that role in Godzilla history. Also, if you're a Godzilla fan and are unfamiliar with the show, or haven't seen it at all, or hell, if this is even the first you've ever heard of it and are curious, view at your own risk. Anyway, so speaking of ZMMR, my Alien review is finally coming up soon, I promise. And I hope to get back to producing episodes more frequently than what I've been doing. So thanks a lot for watching. Zazubaar out.